Well, she certainly looks a damn sight better and acts a bit more naturally on the surface, but really Tenchu 2, the prequel to the fantastic mini-sandbox/stealth 'em up, is kinda disappointing. A really good game, that'll admit, but if judgments could be made about looks alone, then videos like this one wouldn't exist. Everything about the game is a major upgrade from the first, but at its core, the game manages to feel like Tenchu 1 fixed. Everything reminiscent of the first game feels worked over, even the parts that didn't need working over, and some things have actually been made even worse. The second one takes place when the two leads are just teenagers and getting their certification belts from teacher. Honestly, the whole game feels a bit more kiddie, mainly because the acting is even more melodramatic, while the whole game is brighter and more colorful, but you have to remember that they're all just kids and young adults in this one. And absolutely none of the bright colors distract from the detailed plotline or the fact that you're a teenager slaughtering bandits and mercenaries in the jungle. Kind of a Peter Pan meets Last Samurai if I had to relate it to something. Maybe feudal Japan-themed Far Cry 3 with cutscenes from a goofy opera. Whatever. The story revolves around a vast gathering of tribes and mercenaries, with the leaders taking on names of figures from the Chinese zodiac. And by the way, to all anime ever made after 1990, you did not come up with that. Stop acting like you came up with that. In the middle of a desperate power struggle over the samurai warlord from the first game's territory, some random female master ninja betrays the enemy boss, goes rogue, then she and her followers attempt to bring about democracy and an age ruled by ninja and other subservient mercenaries rather than the established samurai. Using a giant battleship no less, in much the same way that Emperor Palpatine attempted to wield the Death Star. All of this results in a bigger and better story, with bigger and better intrigues and double crosses, all framed inside bigger and better levels than the first one, but like I said before, the second game is most certainly good, but in many ways very flawed. So even though it's a vast improvement over the first, it feels like for every 2 steps forward, they took another step back, and that's what makes me hesitate to say it's a better game than the first one at all. Oh, Abraham, Lost Child, but the story is so much better. True, this does explain the motivations of the leads rather well, and why there aren't too many Gota samurai in the first title. By the end of it, we see that Rikimaru does his job out of a sense of honor rather than bloodlust, while Ayame does it out of a sense of family, even though she could be 1 second away from any at all in the worst way possible, giving her more of a personal nihilist edge. But if you take the game in the way that it's represented, the story feels like we're reading each chapter in reverse. First, Rikimaru shows up and needs to piece together how it all got this way and how he's going to save everyone, like a ninja-themed The Hangover. Then Ayame comes into the thick of everything, going tits up on her own mission, like an anime-themed Saving Private Ryan. And later on, we finally get to see all the story through Tatsumaru's perspective, setting up all the various plot points that formed the other chapters for the other ninjas. Look, I like Pulp Fiction-esque story drama, but I had to play the game 3 times over before I understood what the hell was going on. And then I wrote the wiki plot page for the second game for the other retards, like myself, who also didn't get it in one go. Yes, that was me. But, Lost Child, the graphics are halfway decent this time. Well, not as you look farther away into the distance. Tenchu 2, or at least my glitch-ridden copy, doesn't draw overly simple polygon versions of the area as objects and environment fade into the background, like every game did after Spyro the Dragon. And now the game has vibrant skyboxes for the PS1, so instead of everything being cloaked in shadow or dense snow, the objects all appear to fade in from a blurry, partially moving painting. And the world looks more like it's taking shape after coming out of a mirage. And remember the bad draw distance that everybody criticized before? This time, it has the potential to be even worse. It actually kind of works in the dark indoor levels, and for some reason there are actually outdoor levels that do look and feel amazing, with a very wide and spacious draw distance. But there are other outdoor levels that look like a cross between London fog and the Mirage effect. But the mechanics and level design, Lost Child. The linear sections could rival the first Half-Life in atmospheric storytelling. Well, that's all very true, and the last bit is true to a point. Now more in-depth system has been added for swimming, and the controls are tighter than ever. But the problem mainly comes from the fact that the camera now has a default position that points always downward, so it feels like the game is fighting for the right to spontaneously become isometric. And camera position, mixed with epic sprawling levels, means that sooner or later you're going to have to activate the manual take control for the camera just to see a new pathway, or a mission objective, or an NPC who's now attempting to fire arrows at your face or attempting to scream down the whole place looking for help. And if the render distance is at your enemy's eye range or even shorter, then you'll have no idea that you've totally fucked up until it's too late. Tenchu 1 required patience and quite a bit of skill, but this one blatantly feels like a stress test. And I can tell you, from experience, that means that you either do it slowly, quietly, and patiently and finish off an enemy in 5 minutes, or you'll spend 10 minutes trying to hide and sort out being spotted just to get back to the same 5-minute scenario, albeit this time even more difficult because the enemies in these games don't go back to their old patrol routes. Yes, something quite interesting, they start patrolling the places where they last remembered you, which in Tenchu 2 is about as awesome as much as it is a sucker punch to my rusty left kidney, and that's what really lets it down. Tenchu 1 was simple looking and shorter, but the difficulty and the flowy nature of things dragged me off to fantasy ninja fights with very little effort. All of the tiny imperfect details were either easily overlooked, or they added an extra fantasy layer to the intense action. Tenchu 2 is one of those games that's very ambitious and much larger in scope than its predecessor, but it's let down by huge misunderstandings of key concepts in its gameplay and representation, and putting on a robust level editor can only go so far. You know what? I'll tell you what this is. It's an almost PS2 game. The far better textures, low poly yet somehow detailed creatures, huge levels with the atmospheric elements, it all makes it look like it was a port of a far better version of something else, but it doesn't have a whole other port for another system to my knowledge. Look, next time, just wait for the technology to catch up to the idea, or if you're really that impatient, then don't be. Put more work into the finishing touches and simple load backing of the game, because all of these problems reek of not enough time after Q&A testing to me. So you might be wondering,
So
these two totally hold up.
Well, no, not exactly. Really, it all depends on who you ask. Tenchu 1 is darker, edgier, and more well put together. It's more challenging at times, but that only makes me love it all the more. It has a lot of fantasy elements, but it treats the player and the characters and its own subject matter with a certain level of respect, unlike other intellectual properties. It all comes off like a huge, dark murder adventure, and honestly, I love that sort of thing. Tenchu 2 is most certainly bigger and it has a lot of fixes, but it's not necessarily better. All the hip new kids will probably flock to it for its looks and ample backstory, but in the end, it too needs someone to master it, flaws and all. Look, it's quick to impress, but don't forget, you need to put in the work too. And both are still loads better than its grandchildren. The stiff yet dependable Tenchu Z took an early retirement after attempting its own mini-sandbox stealth game for the 360 generation, and the game people refer to as Tenchu 4 now lives in a gutter, because it took its family legacy, all of its trust, and flushed it right down the toilet.
Hey guys. Let's take a game series about established characters, turn the honorable one into a sadist murderer, turn the good kingly warlord into an uncertain paranoid tyrant, kill off his daughter, and when everything ends, let's suddenly reveal that a beloved character had been undead the whole game. And just to give our fans an extra reward for finding all the tiny map bits we scattered all over the place, we'll reveal that our female lead is now cursed by a demonic ninja. Duh! That'll reinvigorate the fans and make them wonder what'll happen next. Right, guys?
No, it won't. My god, Tenchu 4 was garbage. It's like this thing was a sleeper agent designed to take down an entire dynasty. Oh, fuck you!